Hello and welcome to News Laundry Interviews. Today we have with us the National Bureau Chief of CNN-IBN, Bhupendra Chaubey. Thank you for coming, Bhupendra. Let's start with media scrutiny. By and large, media doesn't scrutinize each other in our country. Do you think it should?
Certainly. I don't see any reason why there should not be greater scrutiny within the media. But I think it's not an easy task. And particularly in an Indian context, whether it's print or it's television, there's a lot of scrutiny that goes on when it comes to the virtual world, which provides you with a certain level of anonymity.
But that's not scrutiny, that's just abuse.
Well, that's abuse, but there is, no, I meant, you have all these news websites, for instance, which come up. I have seen that it is easier for you to criticize or appreciate an article or disagree with it if it's a website. But the moment something comes up, say on a mainstream television channel or in a mainstream print media, the yardstick somehow change. But I'd agree with you totally that there has to be greater scrutiny.
Because there was a tweet that your colleague Sagarika had put out after the Shekhar Gupta story that journalists shouldn't criticize each other.
No, I think what she was trying to say, and this has been a very talked about issue, whether the story that had appeared in the Express, was the media so gullible that everyone simply ended up buying what was there on the table. I think the point that she was making was that there should not be jealousy. Suppose if it's a big story, I haven't got it and the other reporter has got it, usually the tendency within journalists is to first try and bring down the credibility of that story. So the point that was being made was that let us not lower the credibility of a story. Whether you agree or disagree,
there shouldn't be jealousy is a bit of a, that's like a guru should say that, Sri Ravi Shankar and all. That is like, there shouldn't be jealousy, shouldn't be hate. I'm saying there shouldn't be criticism. No, it's very specific.
There are two different, you're talking about a completely different point. You see, criticism and disagreement are completely different issues. I may criticize a particular story because I may disagree with it, I may not like it, right? But if I start criticizing the story only and only because I haven't got the story, I think then there is a bit of a problem.
And how does one come to that conclusion that what are the motivations of the criticism?
Well, that's completely on a case-to-case basis. It has to be driven ultimately by the individual, And if somebody says that I know that I saw Rajiv Gandhi being assassinated in front of my eyes, that's a lie now, right? I didn't see it. But suppose I do go ahead and I say that, look, I saw it. This is
my story.
This is my story. Now, for someone to buy my story then, would be what? Would be an act of gullibility?
Which brings us to the whole idea of the motivation. That you shouldn't question anyone's why they're doing something. Now, don't you think that's inevitable in reporting and journalism, that people will question where this story is coming from?
That's a part of journalism. That's a part of news. That is a part of news. The entire concept of hard news journalism, of investigative journalism, is ultimately driven by what? It's ultimately driven by sources. A lot of these stories that we see, everything attributed to high-level sources, could be from a political party or from government, ministry, whatever. Point is, again, I come back to the same argument that every story that comes out ultimately ends up benefiting a few individuals or ends up hurting the interests of a few individuals. Now, those who have been hurt by it will obviously question, from where this story has come from. Is there a hidden agenda? Those who are benefiting from it will say that those who are disagreeing with it have their own vested interests.
But it is justified to question because it could be motivated.
Sure. But I don't see anything wrong with that.
Why did IBN not release that sting on the cash for votes that they had actually gone about and done?
The reason was, and I know, a lot has been said about this.
But just for our viewers, this is when cash was brought into the parliament and they said for the nuclear deal to go through, a lot of MPs were bribed and Amar Singh was the conduit, and those are the allegations made. And IBN carried out a sting, which was never aired.
No, it was aired. It wasn't aired that day. The sting was aired. The sting was aired, I think, after a couple of weeks. I think 3 weeks, if I remember correctly. The reason why that sting was not aired was simply because on that day, when that sting was actually carried out, we were just not ready to put that sting in that manner.
What changed?
What changed from the time when it finally came on air? Well, we had an opportunity to speak to all the people who were involved in that sting, all the people who could have been affected by that sting, positively or negatively. And once we had all the reactions, we put it on air.
But isn't that an exceptional case, because that is not the usual standard procedure for other stings? So when an IBN's motivations are questioned that they buckled under government pressure, do you not think those kind of criticisms are natural and
Those
justified?
are very natural criticism. I mean, any viewer or any person would have obviously put 2 and 2 together, and they would have thought that there is something amiss.
There was
here.
a 2 and 2 to put together?
That's for the viewer. I'm, within our office, I'm sure everyone must have wondered that what the hell is happening. One is not disagreeing with that. I'm only trying to place facts before you. Let me also say, just yesterday, we put out another sting called the Great Baby Bazaar. Babies on sale. Now, what have we done there? It's an outsourced sting. It isn't our sting. But the agency that carried this sting, we put those tapes on air. But before putting those tapes on air, we also made an attempt to go to all these people who'd been stung. Right. And when you are dealing with such high level sting operations, just look at it ultimately. That if you have conducted a sting operation against a government or against a prime minister or whatever, you put that sting out. Surely some attempt has to be made, to give some platform to the person who's been affected by it to explain.
But are those rules consistent across stings? Because they are not, as far as I know.
As far as we are concerned, and that was a great lesson for all of us, that entire sting expose, because it led to, as you say, a lot of questions being raised against our own ethics and our own values and all. We've taken a very clear-cut decision that irrespective of a sting being small, big, whatever, unless we do overground work with that underground work, or at least attempt to do that overground work, we are not going to put that sting.
In which case, let's say a sting can have major repercussions on, let's say it's a vote for a government to stay intact. In some cases, wouldn't getting reactions from those stung be counterproductive to public interests if that is why news does what it does? Because then you give someone time to cover tracks.
No, let me put it this way. You're right when you say that by and large in media, these standards are not followed. I completely agree with you, and I think that's one of the reasons why the entire credibility of sting operations has come down. Now, of course, there is a Supreme Court verdict also, and there are very well laid down guidelines on what are the kind of stings that you can carry, what are the kind of stings that you cannot carry. I think every organization, print, television, whatever, whoever does a sting must necessarily give an opportunity to the person to respond after carrying out the sting. Now, if you're asking me, does it not give an opportunity to a person to cover up his tracks? Well, the sting has already been done. So I do have something with me. I mean, ultimately, it's the person's, whoever has been targeted in that sting, it's his prerogative or her prerogative to respond or not to respond. But at least let us make an attempt to give an opportunity to that guy, which doesn't happen usually.
Okay, let's move on to corporate ownership. Now, Mukesh Ambani's Reliance is one of the major stakeholders in your company, and no one knows what percentage he owns.
It's a public thing.
Yeah.
It's there in public domain.
But no one knows how much percentage there is because the mother company.
I myself do not know, frankly.
Yeah, because it's not in the public domain. In fact, nobody knows.
No. You see, the way there is from what has been shared with us, and I guess only Mr. Bahel would be in a better position to answer this question. But from what's been shared with us is that there is an arrangement which has been worked out between Network 18 and Reliance Industries Limited. I think there is a subsidiary company which has been floated by RIL. I'm not sure of that, but a certain sum is being invested in our company from RIL, which I guess is RIL's decision to enter the media space.
Personally, were you thrilled with the idea?
No one will be thrilled with the idea. Why should we be lying on that? I was a bit uncomfortable. I was certainly not overjoyed, okay, but I was a bit uncomfortable because I didn't know. Well, money is essential for the media. You need money, to ultimately run a channel successfully. But should there be a Lakshman Rekha? Should there be a red line?
As in who you take from, or what is the kind of ownership, or what is the structure?
Well, it's not. No, it's not in terms of who you take from, but what is it that you're giving in return? Are you giving something in return? I think that's what must be stated clearly here. That if someone is giving you something, if someone is giving me money, is the other person trying to buy me out, or is this just a business deal?
Right.
Now, if it's a business deal, well, very good. We've got more funds in our company, so our salaries are safe and sound. So I like that. But I think it'll still take some time to figure out what really is the import of this decision which has been taken. So, I can only say at this stage that I have never been called by anyone in the corporate sector, that you please don't carry this story or carry this story XYZ. It's not happened with me.
But are you aware that it's done or it's not done?
Of course it's done. You're living in Delhi and you're hitting a bureau, so of course it happens all the time. But nobody's nobody's succeeded. Let me put it this way: that nobody's succeeded so far, at least, in pushing a story down my throat or not pushing a story down my throat just because someone may be hailing from a corporate club.
How important do you think it is for any news organization, whether it is print or television, to make its ownership pattern public?
I think it's very important.
Why don't they?
I think it's very important, and I think the fact that RIL has invested in our company and it's there in public domain, I think is a welcome step. Most companies now are public companies. So if you're listed,
no, but the structure of ownership, because what I do know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, of the ownership of what RIL has, is that it has invested in the mother company that owns Network 18.
Yes.
And that mother company is where the infusion is going to happen, and what the ownership structure of that is not public.
Yeah.
TV, Network 18 is public, because, so isn't it just a way of countermanding that
ultimately,
process?
you see, that's why I said that the import of this decision, and I'm not even sure whether this decision has already been implemented, meaning has the infusion of funds already taken place or not, I wouldn't know. But because we are public listed companies, so whether we do it now or we do it later, whenever the money comes in,
public.
It has to be, because if it's coming in to your parent company, ultimately you'll have to explain to your shareholders, no, where the money is coming from, who's investing, how much money is being invested. So I think all these questions will be answered then.
You have written, I read your piece on when the Radia tapes happened, and the blog on sources. And
I don't write usually, but yeah.
And I agree with you that journalists talk to all sorts of people because you don't know where you're going to get a story from. Like you said, Neera Radia was the one who leaked a letter of Jaswant Singh on the BJP, and everybody carried that and nobody questioned at that time. When do you think it starts becoming a problem of being used as a tool, as has happened historically in some cases? Isn't that a very fine line? And if one is caught hobnobbing with a certain lot, isn't your credibility being hit natural?
Abhinandan, I've been a TV journalist now for almost 15 years now. And if I look back at my career, the biggest stories for me have come from the biggest crooks. Okay? But
that's the nature of the beast.
That's the nature of the game. That's the nature of the beast. Now, should one be hobnobbing with these so-called crooks, low on credibility, low on integrity? If I'm a journalist, what is my job? My job is to get information from whoever. It could be Dawood Ibrahim, it could be Anna Hazare, it could be whoever. As long as I'm getting information. The point is that in the process of getting that information, much like what we're talking about capital infusion, if someone is giving me money into my company, what is it that someone is asking for? Similarly, if someone is giving me information, what is it that someone is asking me for in return for that information? I think as long as that distinction is clear, I think as long as a thin line is maintained, and I must admit that it's often not maintained, I think you're fine. What had bothered me in the entire Radia tape controversy was the fact that people were trying to rewrite the rules of the game.
That you can't even talk to them, which
that you
agree
just
with,
don't talk to them.
Sure, absolutely.
How are you ever going to do that? And those who were doing that were people, who, I don't know what kind of sources those people have. So,
what do you think is the motivation for a journalist to do what he or she does? What makes a journalist tick? Personally, what makes you tick?
I'll tell you why I joined journalism. I joined journalism because I set out actually to be a filmmaker, and I realized that I was not getting anywhere near the world of filmmaking because I didn't. I did a brief stint in Bombay, and at that time, Prannoy Roy was looking for some people. I just dropped my CV into NDTV office, and I was called, and that was it. So I really didn't set out to be any journalist. So let me not beat about the bush. I didn't sort of start off with the idea of bringing a change for the country or something. It was a profession. I was good at it. I enjoyed it, and I've been here since then. But I've sort of somewhere along the line that motivation has come inside me. What is the motivation for me? My motivation is that I enjoy the process of getting this information. Because I believe it. I don't know. In some form, it empowers me. It makes me feel as if I'm contributing in some form, to my own self and in a larger context of the nation.
This trend of journalists getting Padma awards, like P. Sainath refused his, and many happily accepted. Do you think there is a moral dilemma there of accepting a Padma award?
Again, it may differ from individual to individual, but see, in India, there's a very strange thing. If somebody tells you, Abhinandan, you're looking good, what's the first reaction? Or nahi, aisa nahi. Somebody says, aap bada acha kaam karte hain. Haan, thank you. There's always a great reluctance for us to accept congratulatory trends, congratulatory messages. I think that this dilemma that you're talking about Padma Awards also stems from that. As long as you're not compromising on your basic work, I don't see any problem. If I'm waiting, hopefully I'll also get a Padma Award, and why should I not? If I get a Padma Award, I'll take it happily. I don't see any problem with that. As long as I'm not asked to compromise.
You think the Padma Awards, by and large, stories have been done on Padma Awards? You think people who deserve Padma Awards have been getting Padma Awards?
Are you asking me about journalists?
No, just generally. Sant Chatwal and you. I mean, there are many, I don't want to name many of those people, but what is your view? Like, let's say, as a journalist, you will do a story on how Padma Awards are given. There have been reports that,
we've done stories how they've been fixed.
So now when you're doing a story on how an award is fixed, and that same year you go and accept that award, not only is credibility hit, don't you think there's just a complete disconnect there? I mean, it makes no sense.
No, it makes no sense. You're right, it makes no sense. But ultimately, I simply believe in one thing. If there is a source of funding, okay, if my salary is coming from the underworld, let me be most contentious here. But as long as I'm doing my job honestly, okay, I'm fine with it, right? If Padma Award has been given to a crook, if Padma Award has been fixed by that crook in whatever way, and I'm also getting the same award the same year from the same person, well, I'll take it because as long as I'm clear in my own conscience, as long as I'm clear in my own conscience, as long as I'm not compromising.
That's very worrying for me.
Well, I don't see any problem. I frankly wouldn't see a problem unless I have a problem with the party in power, which could be my political beliefs. I may not like the Congress, or I may not like the BJP, or whoever is in power.
If you have an ideological problem, you won't accept. Other than that, anything goes.
Yes, ultimately, as I say, this decision can only be taken by you, yourself, on that given day, within those circumstances. Say if a Gujarat kind of a thing has happened, and if a Padma Award is being given to whoever, maybe the Gujarat Chief Minister, the same year that Gujarat pogrom has happened, it may lead to a dilemma. Under those situations, it will.
Why? What is different there, and
case to case basis? That's why I said no. It's
so you mean it's a very personal choice on a specific. It's not a systemic flaw in the system that if you're taking an award from a system that you're criticizing, there is a disconnect. You don't think there's a systemic problem. It is just specific case-to-case individual.
Absolutely. Just look, every year there are some terrific personalities who are given these awards, and every year there are also some contentious personalities who are given these awards. That's the nature of the game. That's the way our politics is.
You've tracked all sorts of political leaders, the senior, in fact, your most recent, Akhilesh Yadav, the young generation. This is a question that I personally find a lot of journalists asking and not getting a straight answer to, that new ideas, you don't hear any new ideas, you don't hear anything new from the new generation. Since you guys interact with them so closely, and you yourself had said that, for 6 months you're given a honeymoon period, when I said you guys are too kind to Akhilesh. A, why this honeymoon period? First question. And second, do you actually see any difference in the previous generation?
Is your question related to honeymoon period between the media and him, or honeymoon period for him governance?
Media and him.
I think
not him, just you said everybody gets a honeymoon period. What is this honeymoon period? Like,
why should there be a honeymoon period?
Yeah.
Ultimately you're a public representative. I think because you need to give some time to the individual to at least prove to us whether that person is serious about whatever commitments, promises that person may have made or not. Specifically in this case of Akhilesh Yadav that you're raising, I thought that throughout his election campaign, I come from UP, and I've seen almost last 5-6 election campaigns very, very closely. For the first time, I actually saw a campaign which was a constructive campaign. It was being run on a positive belief. It was not a negative campaign. There will obviously be references to your political rivals, etc. But this was not a campaign where references were being made to 1992, or references were being made to, how the status of a particular community has not improved, this, that. Here was a guy who was saying, I'll give you computers, I'll give you laptops, I'll give you free education, this, that, free medical treatment. These are all free. Some of this is freebie culture. So you could argue that, are you not agreeing with the concept of freebie culture? But in a state like UP, with such a pathetic state of infrastructure, such low levels of education, healthcare, for someone to be at least talking about it. So that's why
he specifically deserved a honeymoon period for his constructive campaign?
I think so. I think because
others may not.
Well, I mean, when Mayawati came to power, for instance, in 2007, there were, a lot of these lovely articles which were written about her for the first couple of months, and then we all saw what happened. So,
And what is the media's obsession with Rahul Gandhi, which they criticize a lot about?
yeah, I know.
What's that all about?
I hope that post-UP, this fascination will
Post Bihar, nothing
come
changed.
to an end.
Post
but
last UP, nothing changed.
No, but there's difference. You see, this time around, unlike Bihar, where he had withdrawn himself from the campaign midway, this time he was the face of the Congress campaign, through and through. And it's quite surprising, actually, that Rahul
But
Gandhi...
surely the media's obsession with him isn't because how effective he's on the ground. I mean, his obsession with him is completely on far more superficial and shallow reasons.
I'm making a point that I hope that after this UP setback, after this UP debacle, media's obsession will also be a little balanced, hopefully. I mean,
You're saying this has proved some sort of irrelevance of Rahul Gandhi politically?
Many ways. I mean, it has brought out his flaws. It has, you see, to us political,
which were hidden earlier,
to us
deep in
political
his
reporters, to us political reporters, it was crazy. I speak to a lot of my colleagues from different networks, and they tell me that why is it that for every 5-day, 4-day journey that Rahul Gandhi undertakes, there'll be OB vans that'll be sent. I mean, if you draw comparisons between Akhilesh and Rahul, Akhilesh Yadav was doing cycle rallies for a good 1 year before the elections. Okay, it would run what we call in our news bulletins as anchor views, 20-second clip, 30-second clip. Rahul Gandhi goes to Bhatta Parsol, or Rahul Gandhi goes addresses some rally somewhere, the OB vans will rush, and there'll be dedicated reporters. I mean, I know channels who have a specific dedicated Rahul Gandhi beat. There's a Rahul Gandhi beat.
Are you serious? Which one?
Yeah, headlines today, for instance. There's headlines today.
Rahul Gandhi beat, wow, okay.
I mean, there is, they have 1 or 2 reporters whose job is consistently, at least during the election campaign, their job was just go and cover him. See, media, we love faces, we love characters.
And the prettier the better.
The prettier the better. And again, in an English space, I actually would like to see how much coverage was done in the Hindi print media about Rahul Gandhi. And I'm not aware of these facts, but I'd like to figure out how much coverage was given to Rahul Gandhi by Hindi print media and how much coverage was given to Rahul Gandhi by English print and English television.
So is there a disconnect between the English television and how it plays out on the ground?
Let me be absolutely honest on this one. A lot of times issues that we cover, are determined by the kind of cities that those issues come from. Say a jailbreak happens in Chhattisgarh, Bilaspur, Raipur, some jailbreak happens. We don't have a representative there.
Yeah, you don't know, you won't cover it because you need visuals.
We won't cover it.
Sure.
We need visuals,
No, but that is one thing, not covering it. I'm talking about a complete disconnect in understanding what's happening. Not covering something is one thing, but a disconnect in how politics is playing out on the ground.
There is.
You
see, because you can't cover such a vast and diverse country like India from the comforts of a television studio. It's one thing to get spokespersons of the 2 leading parties and just get a debate going between them. But ultimately, what is journalism? Ultimately,
what is?
Person has to be on the ground. Simply put, you just have to be on the ground. If you're not on the ground, there is no way that you are ever going to do an honest job. Now, the ability of organizations to put people on the ground has consistently reduced. I keep hearing these arguments being made regularly. Every 6 months, there's no money. And this is an expensive business, I agree. I wouldn't like to travel, say, in a non-air conditioned car in this heat. I may not want to travel in sleeper class trains. So if I want the comforts, if I want to fly in an aircraft, I want to stay in a plush hotel, so it needs money. Organizations these days do not necessarily spend money.
Which is your favorite newspaper? I ask all journalists this.
My favorite newspaper, I actually read Hindi newspapers more. So I like to read Dainik Bhaskar.
I see.
I like to read Dainik Bhaskar because it covers India. It covers those parts of India that my network may not cover. So it gives me some kind of an idea as to what is happening, say, in Rajasthan, in Madhya Pradesh.
And in English dailies, which is
English
your
dailies,
choice?
frankly speaking, I have no choice in English dailies. But I refer to them just to figure out whether I have missed or have we missed any story or not. And I read every paper. I read Indian Express, Times of India, Hindustan Times. I read all these papers. But my favorite paper, if you ask me, is Hindi Dainik Bhaskar. Gives me a complete wrap-up.
And any journalists who you really respect or look up to?
Rajdeep for me is...
You're looking for a good Diwali bonus.
No, I hope he looks at this and he gives me a Diwali bonus because there is no Diwali bonus concept in our company. No, but I have worked with all the leading television personalities of our time now. I mean, when I was in NDTV, all these individuals were there together. Out of all of them, you can like his style of journalism, you can dislike his style of journalism, but just the kind of democratic person that he is, I wouldn't really be in a position to say whether anyone else would match up. I mean, he's the kind of person that, say, the youngest intern could walk up to him and say, I think, sir, your National Bureau Chief has just made a mistake. And I think that this is not what he should have done, and he should have done this. He'll actually not only give her or him a patient hearing, he may also let me know that I think that she was right and you please correct that. I think that's a rare ability these days in television.
Anyone else?
Particularly in television. My other favorite journalist is my other friend Ravish Kumar from NDTV. And
why is that?
I went for my first trainee shoot with Ravish. See, he was one of those people who was constantly on the ground. Now I see that he's also becoming confined to the walls of a television studio. But he was always on the ground. He was traveling. I mean, I remember he used to do that lovely half an hour weekly show called Ravish Ki Report.
Yeah.
And it used to just capture all social trends, across the country, and which I thought was fantastic. And for him to be able to sort of package it in that form and deliver it regularly, I thought was quite good.
Last question, the younger generation, like your generation, the second generation
Thanks for calling
after
me young.
Dude, you are, compared to... If Rahul Gandhi can be young at 42, come on. He's still a child at 42.
Bilal and Rahul Gandhi, both of them were on the same table. And somebody made a good joke that a 23-year-old young man meets a 41-year-old young man. So both are young, yeah.
No, this is one experience that I had, at least when I was, with News Track, and there were a lot of journalists, and I still see that in many. Ki, boss, khel kya hai? Ye politics. They get really excited by a khel. And like Tarun Tejpal says most often, journalism is about public interest. What is in the interest of the public? That is what we do. And because politics is an exciting space, it's a fast-paced space, they just get so thrilled and they just get such a hard-on with the khel.
True.
They become a part of the game. And I've seen it happen with the older generation. Do you see that in your generation?
I think there is a fundamental problem of talent, of resource pool in journalism. The reason why it's easier for an individual to get sucked into what you say is a khel kya hai, is because there may be a problem of talent. And I have absolutely no shame, embarrassment in admitting this. And I say this very clearly in my organization. Also that, and wherever else I go, that why is it that journalism is the only space which is not attracting the best talent in our country? You look at education, you look at computers, you look at technology, sports. Everywhere, India is a superpower. Okay, only and only in journalism do we have a problem. I don't meet anyone who has a nice thing to say about television journalists or print. They all think you're all paid media and you guys know nothing. Now Justice Karju is there who believes that we have completely zero IQ levels. But he may well be right. He may well be right. I think that the fundamental problem before our business, before our society is just this, that those who are managing journalism today are just unwilling to invest in talents. And anyways, if I'm not going to invest in people and putting them on the ground, to get real information, if I have to be, why is there so much of talk on television? I mean, every leading channel, this obsession with talk shows. Why? Because it's also an easier way to fill up space, no? It's an easier way to fill up space. Do a half-hour debate and you have half-hour sponsored content. Lovely. Rather than sending a team, you go and you do a report on starvation deaths, or do a 6-month-long campaign, which do take place.
But they're few and far in between.
Few and far in between. That's the whole problem. I mean, and it's not just us. It's the entire business.
Thank you for coming. I do hope you get your Padma Shri.
Thanks.
I wait to see if you're going to accept it.
Thank you.